But if you do really sit down and define high achievement and success for yourself, and you really start working toward that, eventually, I do believe your whole life will end up changing. Do you believe that you have to be a high achiever in order to be successful in life? And if you do, have you settled for someone else's definitions of what a high achiever is and what success is? Because if you have, you're sure to find yourself being burned out, feeling unfulfilled, and ultimately being unproductive. So don't settle for someone else's definition. Create your own definition of high achievement and success. And we're going to help you get started on doing that today in this episode. But first, before we do, I'm going to turn it over to Adam to give our formal introduction to the show.
Thank you. Welcome to Settling's Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life. Whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself, we're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or would like to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheers-to-not-settling@gmail.com. Finally, to conclude the plug, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Ko-fi, where we are aiming to buy some new audio equipment. Did you want me to mention the 3 topics that we were going to cover? Or
yeah, that would be great, please. Yes.
Perfect. So Amanda has basically come up with a really great topic this week, and we've got 3 points that we want to cover. So the overall area that we're going to talk about is high achievers. So the first point we want to cover is, what does it mean to be a high achiever, and what are 5 problems that high achievers face? The second is external validation, why high achievers seek it and what's the imbalance that this can cause. And thirdly, how to avoid this imbalance. So I've read over Amanda's notes. I'm super excited to hear about high achievers, so I'll throw it to you.
All right, we'll see what we come up with here. So I picked the topic of high achiever partly because I've written about it already, so it was easier for me to do, but also because I think you and I are probably both high achievers, probably self-defined high achievers. And so I just think we'll have a lot of things to bring to the conversation, a lot of personal experience to bring to the conversation to help people be able to relate to it. And hopefully, like I said, come up with your own definition of what a high achiever is so that you don't end up stressing yourself out and burning yourself out.
Do you want me to start the timer, by the way?
Oh, we did not start the timer. Let me start the timer. Yes, it is started.
We're getting used to this.
That's right, everyone. We started timing our segments last week. So this week's our second week doing it. So we're still a little rusty, but we're getting it. So yes, the timer's on. Thank you for reminding me of that because I completely forgot. So back to high achiever. So first, I just want to offer a definition of what a high achiever is. And I got this definition. I'm just going to read it. It's from Carl Buke, B-E-U-K-E. I always slaughter people's names, but Carl Buke, PhD. And he defined a high achiever as someone who is marked by a strong motive to achieve. And he said less accomplished individuals are often motivated to avoid failure rather than wanting to achieve. So that was interesting to me that he made that distinction. And he also said that achievement-motivated individuals have a strong desire to accomplish something important. And I think that's a big part of it too. And gain gratification from success in demanding tasks. So it's people who, they have a strong motive to achieve, but they also want to achieve something important and they want it to be demanding. They don't want it to be something they don't want to achieve something that's too easy to achieve, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So that definition in mind, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, can you think of anything in your life where you found yourself trying to be a high achiever? Like any specific example?
Yeah, lots of them. And sorry, you probably see lots of smoke on the screen. I've got like incense on and it's decided to just waft towards here.
Yeah.
I think probably going back to when I was working in that call center, I was like always trying to achieve perfection in my work.
Yeah.
Always striving for that next level. And I found personally it took you away from the present moment, and you were constantly looking ahead and never like taking a moment to actually look at what you've achieved and celebrate that. So I think, when I read your comments, I thought there's some pitfalls there. You really need to it's good to have goals, but at the same time, I think it's important to enjoy the moment and celebrate your little successes along the way.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's a good point. Like, it just reminded me, we were talking before the show about the difference between an overachiever and a high achiever. So I think that'd be a good point to make now. So, because I think what you're describing is more of an overachiever.
Okay. Yep.
And I think we've both been that too. I've been an overachiever my whole life. So I think now I'm finally settled into being a high achiever. But the difference, I think, really is that the overachiever is probably more focused on the failure side of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you think? Or does that sound right to you in your experience?
Does. Well, if drawing on that previous example, then I was constantly worried about getting something wrong.
Yeah.
It probably was like failure control versus actually achieving. So,
and I think too, the difference is more that when you're overachieving, you're also very focused, and we'll get into some more of this later too, but you're very focused on your appearance to other people.
Yeah.
And it sounds like probably in the call center example, that would be the case where you wanted to look good in the eyes of your peers and your supervisors and whoever.
Yeah, external validation.
Yeah. And of course, we'll talk about that in our the next segment. But so that maybe helps just clarify what the difference between the two is. And what I came to find out as I researched this, and I wrote an article about it, so that made me think it through a little bit more, is that to answer the question I posed at the beginning, do you have to be a high achiever to be successful? I believe you do have to be a high achiever to be successful in life. But high achiever does not mean overachiever, as I just said.
Yes.
Because if you're going to be an overachiever, then you're not going to be successful in life, because you're going to be living according to someone else's standards rather than your own.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I guess I'll give a quick example from myself now that I put you on the spot first. You like how I did that?
Yep, I like it. Good. Get me thinking.
No, but I can think back, and I can remember as early as second grade, for some reason, is the first one, and I'm sure there were ones before that. But the one that sticks out in my head of being an overachiever is in second grade. I remember we had a math book to complete, and you could complete it like in your own time, kind of. I mean, I'm sure there was milestones, but you kind of had your own time to work on it. And whoever got their math book done first got to go to lunch with the teacher. So, of course, who do you think got their math book done first?
Why did you want to go to lunch with the teacher? Who is this teacher?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. Plus, I was probably a suck up because I was a high achiever or overachiever at that point, an overachiever at that point. And so I was probably trying to be the teacher's pet. I wanted it. Well, and that was it. I wanted to look good. I wanted the teacher to think I was awesome or something. I don't know. But I mean, that's only one example. There are so many examples of those exact kind of things. Like when someone would set out a challenge, it's like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I would do it. Like I won like reading contests. I just like all this stupid stuff that I won. And I didn't care about it at all. Like, for example, that's a good example with the reading contest. Like I would read the book. I didn't even care about reading. I just wanted to win the contest.
All right.
But that is just an example of where I wasn't doing, if you go back to the definition of accomplishing something important, I wasn't accomplishing anything important to me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't care about the reading. I just wanted to be the best one. And
yep.
I didn't really gain any, and gaining gratification from success in demanding tasks is part of the high achiever. Here's another key difference, I think, is that you might get short-term gratification, like in that example where I win the reading contest.
Yeah.
Like, I make myself sound like such a dork.
It's okay. Look, you're a lovable dork.
I'm a lovable dork. But yeah, I got the gratification of being the winner, and that probably lasted all of 20 minutes.
Yes.
No, where if it was something that was really important to me, that gratification could potentially last a lifetime. Yeah,
So,
you and your smoke over there. Come on.
I know, like it's out of
You and
control.
your new age
it's like a smoke machine. So,
but does that help put it in perspective?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it just took a while for the wheels to turn in my head. But so, is it kind of to do with almost like that hedonistic treadmill we talked about a while, where like you would, you'd run on the treadmill, towards a goal that you don't even really want to achieve. You're like, I don't care about this, has no meaning. You achieve it, and then you're like, okay, what's the next thing? And you just keep running, but you're still not finding anything that's really satisfying.
Yes, I would say 100%. And you know why I say that is because it just made me think of, I remember when I graduated from college. And so because all the way up through college, you always have these goals you're working toward when you're in school and stuff.
Yes.
And of course, I was a high achiever, I was an overachiever, not a high achiever in school, of course. So anyways, I remember being done with college and then just thinking, what's next? Like, what am I going to do next? And so what did I do next? Well, I got married. But besides that, we bought a house. Because I was like, okay, I need something else to. It's like, you're right. I always needed that next thing.
Yeah.
That I was working toward, or something big, like the house. First time house. There's a lot of different things that you have to figure out and take care of, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because yes, I was always kind of looking for that next fix, or whatever you want to say.
So actually, another question that comes to mind. So, do you think people do that though? That they keep running after these goals that really are meaningless because they're actually terrified to stop, because of the fact that they might have to then go, "What is all this for?" Right. And they're like, "I don't want to answer that question. I'd rather just keep running and running and running."
Well, that's a good point. Yes, yeah, and I think that
because I felt like I did that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and why don't I quickly, because I think this will play into too what you've been looking at this week a little bit too, because Adam's been learning a little bit about burnout, and there's some boredom.
Yeah, the lost art of boredom it's called.
Does that play into this at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, the whole idea there, I guess, is that in the world we live in today, we never stop. Like, we always activate that part of our brain. I think it's called the executive attention network, which is always on when we're consuming and we're doing things.
Yep.
But we've lost that art of boredom, because we've got devices that constantly feed us information, laptops.
You got smoke going in your face.
Smoke going everywhere, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to be the Dalai Lama or something here today.
No, it's just funny because it's like you can't be bored when you got smoke flying through.
No, exactly. Just get some incense rocking out. But that's so they're saying the problem with that, right, is if you don't stop, you don't activate that part of the brain. I think it's called the default mode network, which is where your brain is just in a rest state, and it's that in those moments is where your brain actually gets a moment to kind of catch up with everything and start to kind of reflect on various things. And that's where people come up with some great ideas. So like, good example would be J.K. Rowling. She's on a train. She's just sitting there, probably bored. I don't reckon at that time we actually had phones where you're constantly scrolling.
No,
and that's where she came up with, Harry Potter. So like, imagine if J.K. Rowling was on that train and she sat there all day long just scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or something. We might not have Harry Potter. And for me, that's devastating.
Oh, for me as well, because, we've already established that I've never seen or read Harry Potter. So
I I'm deliberately drawing on these examples to be
I
like, come on,
know.
mate.
I
Step up.
know.
What are you doing?
I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I do know who J.K. Rowling is, but no, that's interesting because, gosh, and now I've said interesting. So this is another funny thing. Last week's show, I said interesting probably about 100 times. So I'm probably going to have to come up with a different word.
Interesting.
But anyway, interesting. That's really interesting. But yeah, I didn't think about how the boredom aspect would come into play. But yeah, I was looking at, so I didn't cover the 5 problems that high achievers face yet. But I feel like boredom. Yeah, I know. I'll just read through them quick because I'm thinking the boredom would maybe be like a 6th one almost, or like the fear of boredom. But one is that they suffer from imposter syndrome, which means that they always feel like they're not good enough. There's a hidden pain behind their drive. A lot of high achievers become that way, or definitely overachievers for sure, become that way because there's some pain in their past that they're trying to overcome or hide. And the third one is that they fear losing everything. And so that kind of goes into what we were talking about a little bit earlier too, about fearing that you were going to do something wrong. They're lonely, and this is an interesting one. I'll come back to a second, but the 5th one is that they feel guilty because they don't feel like they deserve the success that they have realized. So that's just interesting, just to throw out. We're not going to obviously get into each one, but just a few interesting things to think about, that things to be aware of when you're assessing your own level of high achievement or overachievement. But I was thinking, and I wonder if you want to go over just a minute here, the lonely thing. Because
yes, that was a particularly interesting one when I read it.
Right. Well, and maybe that kind of actually could play into the external validation a little bit. So maybe, because we're at the end of this section, why don't we start the external validation maybe, and then we could play the loneliness. I think would come into play with that.
Yes.
All right.
I like it.
So that's the official end of this segment.
30 seconds to go. Before we wrap this one up, though,
sorry.
There's an anecdote I want to use for probably overachievers, right? Because I felt like my example wasn't good enough because I'm an overachiever. So,
my God.
So Greg McKeon, right? So me and Amanda talked about him a little bit, and we might discuss him later in the show. Wrote a book on essentialism. It's called Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less, okay? And he talks about this figure. He doesn't name who it is. It's in his book. But this guy who is doing it all right, he's changing the world. He's constantly going and doing all these things, and he's so busy, and, he just never stops. Then he wakes up in the middle of the night, and it sounds like a gunshot's gone off. And he's like, oh, my God. And he's like, what the heck's happened? Yeah. But there's been no gunshot. Everyone in the house is asleep, and he's like, what the heck? Then he goes back to sleep, and he hears another gunshot, and he's like, this is weird. I don't know what's going on. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, you're burnt out. Like you've burned into your deep reserves, and you've completely you've run out of energy. And so the example talks about, the doctor's like, you need to rest. You need some good 6 or 10 weeks of rest. So he
6
then
or 10 weeks.
6 to 10 weeks of just full rest. And he turns around and he's like, no, I will do this in 2 weeks. That's how good I am. I'll do it in 2. And the whole point there, right, is he's missing the fact that it's no, it's not a contest to say that you have to sprint to getting better from burning yourself out. It's not a contest. It's about, you just need to accept the fact that you've been running too hard and trying to probably overachieve. It's this constant need to, do better than anyone else, because that's how they are. Yeah.
No, I like that one. That's
hopefully that's a good example. I just thought that was such an interesting example. That's so true.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Interesting. Oh no, I'm gonna start saying that now.
Oh my God. But we're gonna have to start a drinking game, because seriously, I said it so many times last week that someone would go through a whole bottle of liquor.
We're gonna have some very drunk listeners. Now,
Yeah.
I've put us 2 minutes over our segment. I apologize.
No, you're good.
We'll move to external validation.
All right. So external validation is what we're talking about now. So what external validation is it's when you look to other people to determine your value, basically. So you're looking at other people to determine the value of your opinions, determine the value of your life choices, determine the value of your achievements, whatever it might be. And high achievers often seek external validation, just like everybody does. I mean, everybody tends to do this, but the difference between a high achiever doing it is that because a high achiever has a strong desire to accomplish something important, it stands to reason that they're going to have to find some external validation in order for their accomplishments to be important.
Yep.
I mean, it can be important to just them, but I don't think that's going to be good enough for a high achiever. I think it's going to have to be important to at least, I think of a high achiever mainly as wanting to do something that's important to the masses. But I think at the least, a high achiever would want to do something that's important to their immediate circle of influence. Yep. So I don't think that it's going to be, for most high achievers, it's not going to be good enough to just say, yeah, this is important to me. And so I think that is partly why the external validation is really important to high achievers. And the trick is, though, you have to balance it, because it is important, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, is what I'm trying to say. So external validation in and of itself is not a bad thing, because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I refer to all the time, and if you're not, for people who aren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow was a psychologist who came up with this hierarchy of needs that we have to meet in order to become what he calls self-actualized, or basically the best person that we can be, the person we were meant to be. It starts out with physical needs, safety needs, and then it moves into love, belonging. Love, belonging is one need. So your love, belonging need and your esteem needs. So in order to meet your love, belonging, and esteem needs, you really do need external validation. To me, it seems like. So in order to meet your needs and become the best person you can be, you do need some external validation. But you just have to be, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to make sure, I think, that you're getting your external validation from people that you actually respect, and people that respect what you're doing as well. Like, well, you have mutual respect with.
I think that's a really good balance that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, do you find, or do you think that some people start pursuing something that's really meaningful to them, and then they like stop following that path because of the fact that they don't get external validation, when in actual fact they should continue to move, and the validation will come eventually?
Yes. Well, and it's really interesting, I think, when you focus on it. And at the beginning, again, I'll go back to the beginning where I encourage everyone to come up with their own definition of high achievement and their own definition of success. Once you do that, you will start, and I can say this from experience because I've been practicing this for at least the last year and a half. I've been really focused on this and defining it for myself. You start attracting the right people that you need validation from. And I'll just use you as an example. I mean, really, you're a perfect example of someone that I needed in my life. And if I hadn't done all the work ahead of time to define exactly what I wanted and exactly what people I wanted to influence me, we would have never met.
Yeah, very true.
And so that's just one perfect example of once you make those decisions for yourself, it is really interesting how everything else kind of falls into place. And then it sets you up to really be a high achiever. because it helps
like
give
that.
you that esteem. Because you and I talking every week, it does help me, give me more esteem. And then I can go out and create things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to create otherwise. And then then I'm influencing more people, and maybe they can, they find esteem and they can influence someone. And, that whole ripple effect that we've talked about before.
Yep. Guys, I'm getting emotional here. She's getting me in the feels.
I know, I was going to say.
Oh my God, I'm going to, tough.
Like, Adam, I can't live without you. No.
But I think that's such a beautiful example, and it's so true, because when I read through those 5 points that you mentioned, that loneliness, funnily enough, was the one that I stopped on, and I went, wow, okay, that's a really, really good point, because this is what led me to Amanda, is I'm trying to find my tribe, I'm trying to find my people, because I've got lots and lots of people that I absolutely love in my life, and I have wonderful conversations with, and I really respect, but very limited people that I can sit down and talk to these things about, self-learning, self-awakening, spirituality, all those topics. I don't have many people I can, and I think I said this to Amanda early on. It frustrated me because I would listen to these amazing speakers talk of these amazing concepts that would completely blow my life apart in a good way. Right, and I'd be I just want to talk to someone about this so they can be as excited as me. And I'd start talking to people in my immediate circle, and they'd be like, yeah, good story there, man. That's awesome. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So I think it is interesting. Don't force it on people, because a lot of people won't be on that same page. But I love the point of you start to attract people that have the same ideas as you. Yep. And then you can have those geek out moments together.
Exactly. And it sounds crazy or it sounds like a bunch of hooey or whatever, like when you're talking about the law of attraction or something where you're drawing people to you. But it really does happen. And I don't know that it's really that you're drawing people to you as much as that you're putting out there, you're putting your true values out. Yeah. And when you put your true values out into the world, then other people are going to notice and say, oh, I have those values too, or I have those interests too, or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah. And I just had another thought too, when you were talking about that, and I lost it. But maybe I'll move on then, because I lost it. So maybe I'll come back to it.
With the external validation thing,
yeah.
An example I always think about, and I mean, hopefully this will be a test to see whether Amanda, have you watched much of The Simpsons?
Not a lot. I have watched it, yes, but I mean, I'm not like a avid fan or anything.
Well, hopefully our listeners have, because I just think of this example. So hopefully everyone knows about Lisa Simpson, and she's the smart one in the family, the teacher's pet kind of thing. So there's an episode that I think about where all the teachers go on strike. And as we know, Lisa's always getting A's and A pluses and stuff in the classroom. Right. So when she ends up having to spend time at home while the teachers are on strike, she's really craving that external validation. And I just remember this moment where she comes into the kitchen, goes up to her mum, and she's like, grade me, please, just grade me. And her mum writes A plus on the paper, and she just walks away holding it, being like, ah. And I think that's true of so many of us.
That's a good example. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just thought it's just
You're welcome.
But I just think it's so true, right? Don't define yourself solely based on others. I certainly did that. If I didn't, and we talked about it a little bit last week with the whole idea of the nice guy, where you're constantly trying to meet the needs of other people, but you don't have any authenticity in and of yourself.
Exactly.
So you've really just got to find that inside. It's good to have external validation and self-esteem, but ultimately you should be able to feel comfortable in yourself to say, I achieved something. Nobody's called me out and said how wonderful that is, but you know what? I'm just happy enough in myself that I've done that.
Yeah, exactly. And it will come. There's no proof of that other than just doing it. So I guess I'll throw out another example of mine is, so I have the Expectation Gaps, which is my nonprofit organization I've been working on for like a year and a half. And by anybody else's definition, I probably haven't been very successful with it as far as like monetarily or like my number of subscribers and that kind of stuff. But by my definition of success, it's completely successful because of what I've gained from it and everything I've learned. But what it's done is, in that process, if I wouldn't have gone through the process of what I'm going through with that, again, I'll come back to, I would not be focusing on the right things in my life to start attracting the right people.
Yeah, nice.
And it takes a long time. It's not something that just happens overnight or that you can prove it. But if you do really sit down and define high achievement and success for yourself, and you really start working toward that, eventually, I do believe your whole life will end up changing. And everything will just start unfolding. It's so weird because for me, it's almost like there's just this path that's already been made for me and I'm just following it. It really is. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's been so true in so many different ways. And so anyways, yeah, there's just a lot of good examples that have come from my experience with that. But one other thing to point out, because you talked about the validation, like with Lisa Simpson, but another part of when you are looking for external validation and you're looking at it in the wrong places, and you're putting more emphasis on your external validation versus your internal, so versus you giving value to your achievements and your opinions and your accomplishments and whatever. When those two things are out of balance, you also seek instant recognition.
Yeah.
So that comes into play with both my example and your example, I think, where mine, I've been working on something a year and a half. On paper, it looks like it's not successful. I'm definitely not receiving instant recognition. But yet, I still keep going, and it's still very valuable to me. And I find validation in it. And then it reminds me of the Lisa Simpson, where she needed that instant recognition right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's another big clue to yourself to know if you're seeking too much external validation, is if you need instant recognition all the time.
I like it. That's a really useful tip, I think.
Yeah.
But is that more of a millennial thing? Because I hear so many people talk about millennials who come into, okay, because like,
oh, go ahead. I'm shaking my head, but I'm not trying to cut you off.
I want your validation, man. I want it instantly. Okay.
Sorry, Adam.
With millennials, like we used to joke, and no offense to millennials, because I don't know. I think I am a millennial. I don't even know what I am. I don't know who I am. And
you haven't been validated yet.
But millennials, we'd joke how millennials would come into the workplace, and like as leaders, we'd spent years and years getting to that point of where you became an appointed leader. Yeah. And you'd have someone who'd come in for a month and been like, all right, so like, am I a leader now? Or we'd be like, dude, you have so much work to do. You need to go through this whole big stage of learning before you get to leadership, which is, interestingly, that's changing now. In that same corporate environment I found, people are just getting elected to leadership very quickly, really? Like they have a good couple of weeks, producing results, and it's like, yeah, you can be a leader, no worries. Whereas like back in my day, you'd have to like fight and like you'd have to prove yourself on so many fronts to attain that level of being the right to be a leader,
Well, that's interesting. Oh, here we go. Gosh darn it. I'm going to stop saying interesting. No, I'm probably not.
Hold on. I'm just, while you're making a point, I'm just going to look up synonyms. Okay.
For interesting.
Synonyms. Okay.
And we're about to the end of this segment here. I just noticed. But
okay, so you could start saying fascinating, engrossing, riveting.
What's the last one?
Saying fascinating. That's fascinating.
Okay, I'll try that one out. Fascinating.
Okay.
But now I lost it. No, I'm wondering what that's about, what that shift is. And we got to get into the next segment, but I am curious. Maybe we'll have to follow that up another time because I'm curious to know what that is about. Where like these people are maybe leaders like immediately.
Yeah,
So
I don't understand
a topic for another day.
Yes. We'll
Okay.
I've got some thoughts on that.
Yes, I'm sure you
the
do.
Final point is how do we achieve that balance that you were talking about, or avoid that imbalance?
Avoid the imbalance. Yes. So, I guess I've kind of already let the cat out of the bag a couple times here, but I don't know if that's a saying in Australia or not. But
yeah, it is. I just hearing you say it makes me laugh.
But anyways, really, I think the best way to do it is obviously self-awareness. And we've talked about a couple ways that you can become more self-aware if you're crossing over from high achiever to, there goes my timer. Sorry, that's what I was messing around with because
we are live, people. This is real life.
You're not good at this timing thing, but we'll get there. Is your timer going?
My timer's going. Look, I can be the timer if you like, because my timer doesn't make
Apparently, I can't handle that. That's an achievement I can't handle. But anyway, so all right, so we already talked about how a few ways that you can recognize when you're sliding over from being a high achiever into being an overachiever, and when you're seeking external validation too much. But again, I'll go back to it really depends on you defining what success is for you.
Yeah.
And I think that is pretty much the driver, because a lot of us, I think, define success based on what we see on TV or what the success that our parents had or our family had. We think we have to have that same kind of success, or our friends, because there is some statistic about this, which I don't have off the top of my head here, but there's something about the satisfaction, like people feel satisfied in their lives if they are on par with the people around them. So like the people, like your friends, like if you make the same amount of money as your friends, if you have like kind of the same possessions as your friends, and this time you feel more satisfied in your life than if your friends are all making $150,000 a year and you're making $25,000 a year. You wouldn't feel as good about yourself because of the people that you're surrounding yourself with, or not because of the people, but because of how you're defining success, because you're comparing yourself to those around you. So it's this constant battle, I think, because it's really hard, because it's just in our faces so much. Like what I just said, all those things are in our face every single day, all those people. And so it's just a constant battle with yourself to remind yourself of what success means to you.
That, I think, is a really good point, because I think you will find more and more when you find what it is that's meaningful to you, and you can define that, you can put that as your yardstick for success. Then life becomes a lot easier. However, you will start to really notice people that aren't on the same page as you. Like I had a phone call with a friend I haven't spoken to in a while the other day, and love the fella, but he called me just to basically tell me how much like money he was earning, and like I've achieved this and I've got this and I've got that. And it's because before, in the job that I was previously in, I was on good money. And there was always this discussion between us of him saying like, man, I can't believe you earn so much money. I wish I earned as much money as you. And it just was quite an interesting thing that I was like, I don't associate money with success anymore. Like, not saying if I earn lots of money, I wouldn't be. I'd be disinclined to earn lots of money, but it's not the thing that makes me feel successful anymore. So, in hearing these people, and I've come across so many of them, and maybe it was the same number as before, and I'm just more aware of the fact that that's not important to me. But yeah, I'm just like, that's amazing. It's great to achieve all that money, but like, is it purposeful work? Like, do you find that you're getting a lot of self-satisfaction from it? Or are you just happy because you can tell friends or people around you, like, guess how much money I'm earning? Like, you shouldn't want to run out and do that. And we're all guilty of it, but it
Yeah.
should be something to be like, why am I doing this? You know, and is the work that I'm doing meaningful?
Right. Well, and it goes back to that instant gratification or instant recognition where you're going to feel good about that money for about 5 minutes.
Yes.
And then, because even when I think back about times when I've gotten raises and things, and you know, you're real excited about it at first, and then that excitement wears off real quick.
Yes.
If there's nothing else to back it up, if you're not already excited about the work that you're doing and the place that you're working, then money's not going to make you more excited about it. It might help you be so you're not as discontent, but you're still going to be discontent, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
it might lessen your discontent a little, but it's not going to make you content. But anyway, yeah, because I can just reflect on that and remember those times. And then I would feel bad because I'm like, I should be more excited that I just got this raise, but I'm really not that excited about it.
So I really hope Lydia listens to this episode, because I've been thinking about this example since reading your last point.
Yeah.
So Rose and I watched the latest Disney Pixar movie the other day called Soul. And this is beautifully aligned to what you just said, right? So the lead character is a high school music teacher. And like throughout the movie, he just wants to get his big break. He's obsessed with jazz, and he just wants that opportunity to be part of a quartet that will lead him to success, right? And the whole movie, I won't ruin it for people, but the whole movie is him desperately trying to get to that point.
Okay.
And by the end of the movie, right, he gets there and he achieves that. But when it happens, he literally is like, all right, so what's next? And they're like, you know, we just do this again tomorrow. And he's like, oh. And he literally says, he's like, I thought I would feel happier about this moment. And the whole premise, I think, of the movie, which is just a beautiful one, and I wish my 5-year-old had was paying attention, because she's like, no, I'm paying attention to something else. Like, she wasn't
but she wouldn't get that message yet. But
no, it's probably a bit deep for a 5-year-old. I probably set my expectations too high. But poor Rose. But the whole idea was like, he missed out on all those lovely moments, right? Like, so the leaves falling on the trees outside, or the clouds, or things like that, because he was always just constantly thinking like, I want to achieve success, you know? So I think that's a big thing, is just, you know, it's good to have goals, but just keep in mind that, you know, we only have the present moment. Enjoy life that's happening right now. Otherwise, you'll probably look back after you achieve your success and probably feel really unsatisfied, I think.
Well, for sure, because I can think of so many examples in my life where that has happened, and I'm sure you have too, where you achieve something and it's just empty once you get there, because you were looking for the validation. You weren't looking for the actual achievement, or you weren't enjoying the journey of getting to that achievement. And so, once you got there, and I guess that's the interesting thing too, is I think when you are a high achiever, a true high achiever, and you are working towards something important, because that, again, is part of the definition of being a high achiever, is that you are working towards something that's meaningful to you and that you feel is important. You do enjoy the process so much that I think when you, and I haven't really got to the point of having like, you know, paper, what looks like success on paper yet. But I think when I get there, I feel like it's just going to be the icing on the cake, and it'll just be like another day. But it will be just as good as the day before and the day after, because I'm already enjoying what I do every day.
Yes, love it.
And it's taken me a long time to get there, people. That's the other, like, I don't want to sit here and sound like I have this cherry life that is, you know, I've just got this perfect life over here and I love every minute of every day. But I definitely have taken a lot of steps to get a lot closer to that. And I can see that being possible. But another thing I just thought of that would help people a lot, I think, balance the scales, I guess, of your internal validation and your external validation. A new habit I've just started is, at the beginning of every day, I set like 3 goals for myself. And they're not all work goals, like, but they're 3 things I am definitely doing that day, no matter what. And sometimes they're work, or sometimes just like, I'm going to play a game with my daughter tonight, or, stuff like that too. It's just as important. And then, so I'm setting those goals for a successful day. If I get those 3 things done, it's a successful day for me. And then at the end of the day, I also sit and reflect, and I think of 3 things that I'm very proud of that happened that day. And so I think that helps for me, it's really helped me a lot. I just started kind of doing that maybe in the last month.
Yep.
But it's really helped to keep perspective, because you do forget, because we all get so busy. And obviously I still have a bit of the the overachiever. Sorry. I definitely have some of the overachiever in me still. So I kind of have to try to balance that out.
Yeah.
And you get so busy in your life that you do forget all the stuff you actually got done, because there's so many things you don't get done in a day, or that you don't run out of time, and you forget to give yourself credit for all the stuff that you did do. And I think that really helps once you kind of shift that perspective, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I did get a lot of stuff done today.
I like it. It's very true. I think if you do set yourself a couple of goals, no matter what goals they are, you do like get to the end of the day and you do feel good in yourself. Like, but yeah, we don't do that enough. It's a habit that you have to form, isn't it?
Yeah. And I forget sometimes, well, both ways I forget sometimes, but especially the one, like, what I'm proud of at the end of the day, that one is really important. And I do forget to do it because it's at the end of the day. But I have found that that's probably the most rewarding one to do. And I guess it helps define what I see as successful.
Yes.
Because the things that I'm proud of that day will define what I think success is.
Can I put you on the spot now?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the 3 things are that you're proud of today?
Today? Okay.
Yeah.
So I know I was trying to remember what they were yesterday as I was saying it. So today so far, I would say I'm proud of, I got up on time, first of all.
Nice.
And the reason I say that is because yesterday I was not feeling the greatest, and I did not get up on time yesterday, and I had kind of a sleepy day. So I was very proud of myself. I got up and I got going today, because I could have made an excuse and not done that. The second thing I would say I was proud of today is that I managed my work schedule very well today, and I got everything done that I wanted to get done. And so not even anything specific, but just that I managed the schedule. And then probably I would say this is going to be one thing that I'm proud of for today.
I'm proud of this. Yeah.
when we're done with it, because every time I do this, I don't know, it's just a learning experience, and it's something I never would have done. Like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I never ever would have done this. And now it's almost like second nature. It's not quite second nature yet, but it's getting there. So I'm very proud of that.
I think those are 3 very, you think about it. If you didn't sit and spend time thinking about it, you could just let those things slide.
Yeah,
whereas,
because they just are part of your day.
You should be proud of.
Yeah, thank you. But right, there are things that you take for granted, because of course, when you get up, it's just a normal thing. Getting your work done is just a normal thing you take for granted. But all of that takes a lot of self-discipline and a lot of effort. And, so give yourself credit, I guess, is what I'm saying. Give yourself credit for the little things.
Well,
when you start doing that, I think the big things will come along.
Yeah, I agree. One thing with today's episode, I will say while we're still recording it, I have really enjoyed this because I've tried to shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And as a result, I managed to get some really amazing insights from a friend. And that's one big thing, right? I want to let everyone know this because Amanda knows this because I talked to her about it. And a lot of the episodes before, I was obsessed with what did the audience want? Am I going to say the right things that people are going to resonate with and appreciate? Whereas I wasn't actually getting lost in doing the episode and enjoying and listening and learning, which is the whole point of why I wanted us to do this.
Right.
So today is a good example of I'm going to take some things away. Certainly the points that you said about setting goals in the morning and then, reflecting on them in the evening, I think that's something that would be really helpful. So I hope people have got that from today, because, just take that time to pause and actually listen, because so much of the time, you spend just constantly being like, I want my turn to speak, but you should just stop and listen, I think.
Well, that's a great point too. Yeah, because I think, that would be something to be proud of, I would say. And
yep.
Then you're also, I think that helps with the validation too, is where I'm going with that. Because it's interesting. Here we go. That's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating. It's not.
That's it. Yay.
Because I think when you're trying to insert comments rather than listening, that's also seeking external validation.
Yes, it is.
So.
And isn't it funny that if you don't then get immediate recognition, you feel unsatisfied? I had that, right? Where I'm like, those points that I made in that episode were fantastic. Why have I not received an abundance of comments or views?
Right.
And it's like, who do you think you are, person, to actually think that, you don't need that. Just be satisfied that you had an enjoyable episode.
Exactly. Yes. And the rest will come. It will. So how we got to be close on time.
We are done. So that's 16 minutes. We have wrapped up the 3 points. Do you want me to wrap up what the 3 points were?
Yeah, that'd be great, please.
Cool. So 3 points that Amanda covered. First one is, what does it mean to be a high achiever? And what are 5 problems that high achievers face? The second, external validation, why high achievers seek it and the imbalance that this can cause. And thirdly, how people can avoid this imbalance. So that is the 3 episodes focusing on 3 topics focusing on high achievers.
Yes. And so hopefully you picked up some tidbits, even if you can just take one thing away from it. I think that's the most you can hope for sometimes when you're learning, is if you can take one thing away, that's awesome. But we hope you took even more than that away from it. So with that being said, as Adam said at the beginning of the show, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify. You can also find us on Amazon Music. You can email us at cheerstoNotSettling@gmail.com. We're also on LinkedIn, but whatever. You can find us. You can like our content, comment on our content, whatever it takes, because we're trying to get the algorithm gods to recognize us. So if you can help us out with that, that would be awesome. And
validate us.
Yeah, we need validation, instant, right now. No, but the algorithm gods do need instant validation.
They do.
So,
they do.
With that being said, we would say, cheers to not settling.
Cheers to not settling.
Take care.